I'm Scott Allen Miller, and here on Sam IT, we're having a day of job posting fakeness. I've actually had a few people that I've spoken to just today about fake job listings that they've been dealing with, and it made for some great topics because this is big stuff in IT, and I want to talk about it more. So I'm going to talk about a couple things that I've seen today, at least in the last 24 hours, that either are fake or could be explained by something that's fake, even if they're not in this particular case. We can't always prove a specific case, but we can see trends and examples of things to look out for. One, I just spoke to a friend of mine who went through several rounds of interviews, went to the point where they called references. Everything was great. They were ready to hire him. And when it came to the last second, what they said was, oh, we're sorry. All of the positions that you were looking at have been filled. So they're not available to you. We won't be able to hire you. Oh, wait, we do have one position left. It's much more junior, and they'll have to pay you a lot less than you're asking. If you want that, you can have it. This sounds kind of honest, right? But there's a really high chance that it's not. Now, in this particular case, this person feels that they're being honest, and they might be. But chances are they're not realistically. If we look at this logically and statistically, this is something that people get continuously, and there's a reason for it. When people, there is a trend with people, and a great book that I'm going to recommend in many videos is Predictably Irrational, which helps you understand how people react to marketing, or to things like marketing, sales and marketing, and gimmicks and pricing structures. And something that humans have is if you get them excited about anything, or you let them have something, right? You give someone a car, and then you have another car of exactly equal value, right? And you offer to trade with them. Logically, trading two things of equal value, they should be basically neutral on it, right? They're not losing anything, they're not gaining anything. But if you want to switch, whatever, no one has lost or gained value. However, people become emotionally attached to things that they own, or that they feel that they own, and they place higher value on that than something they don't own. And in some ways, this makes a lot of sense. You get your hopes up, you start picturing yourself in your car or whatever, but in other ways, it doesn't make sense. You put too much value on something that just doesn't have that value, and should you lose it, you're not actually losing that much. With jobs, or a lot of things in life, the same thing happens. So when someone offers you a job and gets you to a point where you can picture yourself in that job, and you're thinking you have that job, and you're imagining how great your life is going to be working at that company, it starts to become the job that's in your hand to you mentally. And then if they try to take that job away, it's not the same as if a week ago you hadn't heard about that job. Now it actually kind of hurts you. You feel like you've had something and now you've lost it. And this is what they prey on. They do this quite often. They'll give you a higher paying, very nice sounding job at a company. They'll make the company sound great, make the job sound great, they'll make the pay sound great. And once you're in a position that you're really excited and you're really interested and you're ready to make this happen, and you're committed, and you've talked about how excited you are about this company and how much you're behind them, and then that job got filled. Someone even better than you came along and took that job. Well, if you would like to take a big pay cut, make 20% less, and take this lower position you wouldn't have considered last week, but this week, for some reason, you're willing to consider. They know that this is how it works, and this is a standard tactic to get people who are overqualified and worth more money into lower positions. They may promise promotions later. They may imply that you'll be next in line for the position you just wanted a day ago. You don't even know if that position exists, and by the time you're in that lower position, it's too late. You're stuck, and your resume shows you now working at a lower rate and at a lower position. It's harder for you to move on to the next job since they've now trapped you. Just market pressure. So this is a really common tactic and something you have to look for. It's a bait and switch. It's not legal, but it's effectively impossible to prove, like most things. But it's really obvious when it's happening, and really obvious that it has a logical basis for happening. Now, another one. I was looking at a resume for someone last night, and there were really obviously conflicting requirements on the resume. On the job posting. They also had me look at their resume, but looking at their job posting, there are lots of conflicting things. The job was looking for a network engineer. So an engineer is a person who plans, networking is a person who does routers and switches and those kinds of things, and the position was for a junior. But when you went through the requirements, suddenly the requirements were focused on systems and senior and administration, which is not engineering, but it's an operations position. So everything was different. Then when you went even farther, when they got to the desired skills, things were mismatched in less terrible ways, but were still mismatched, with some things being written in one form and other things being written in another form, as if they'd just been copied from another source and hadn't been checked to see if they made sense in the context. And then even farther, when they went to the desired skills, there were other problems, like a whole bunch of random company names that were not associated with anything else in the job description or in the requirements, just thrown in with no explanation as to why they would be beneficial or how they even made sense, because in many cases they were vendors and not products, so they weren't even logical things to have said. For example, and it's getting really dark here, there we go, where we completely lost our light, we're in the hurricane, the outer reaches of the hurricane, and for example, you may need someone in the real world who has a Windows Server administration experience. This is completely logical. However, the requirement on this particular job posting was simply for Microsoft experience. Microsoft? Microsoft's a company, it's not a product. Do you have experience with their ERP, with their database, with their operating system, with their Office products, with Minesweeper? What? That's a good sign that no technical person, not even a technical person, let alone a business IT person, has ever looked at those requirements or taking it seriously. So you know pretty quickly that job has to be fake, because there's no way that a legitimate job for a company of any size had no technical person anywhere write up a technical requirements list, especially when it's a technical requirements list of requirements. How did they come up with requirements if they didn't know what those requirements meant? Obviously it's fake. There's no other way for it to have been anything, right? There may be a job, but it's not a job they're taking seriously, and it's certainly not the job that the requirements said they'll never be able to fill. That's not possible. And the other was someone who's looking, they knew someone who's looking and was struggling because all the job requirements say that they need a bachelor's degree. And this is one of those tricky ones, and we're going to have an entire video about why that's completely fake. But in this particular instance, their feeling was that because of their locality, that all the experience that we have in the market, that things like that aren't real, don't apply. And people would say, well, you know, in our market, if you don't have a bachelor's degree, no one hires you. Well, that's fine, but the problem is that when almost all of your jobs are fake, no one hires you anyway. So you get a really skewed perspective, but it encourages you to think that those things are real, so you feel that that's a reason, and they'll use that as a reason when they turn you down, because it's a really, really handy one. No one ever argues and says, I think you would hire me if it was some other thing. I don't think that this is really why you're choosing not to hire me. It's not a conversation that you want to get into, but because of that social structure saying that you can't question why they tell you, also leads you to have no information except that they claimed this is why they didn't hire you, even though it's completely illogical and makes no sense that that would be why, because that requirement in no way reflected the job that they wanted to hire you for. So those are three things that I saw all in the last 24 hours. Can't prove that they're all fake, but logically all three of them make sense to have been fake. One has to be fake, and two are very likely fake, with one being almost surely and one relatively likely. They're all very standard, by the book ways to fake job requirements, specifically because they're very hard to question and very easy to get the results that people are looking for. So I hope that these anecdotes are helpful to you. Remember to like and subscribe and support us here on Patreon, and let us know in the comments how you've been faked out for jobs, or list some jobs that you've seen and ask. Let's tear apart some job postings. And it's pretty quick once we start posting these to show standard patterns that are used to make sure that they can't get anyone that meets those requirements, so that they always have an excuse to turn you down. Thanks for joining me.